30-second now. Hello, everyone. We are so excited to have you here. We are also excited to be here because we heard you. We read your posts. We saw your social media where you were mentioning that you are grieving and you miss loved ones. And not only did we hear you, but we feel you because we too experience grief and depression. And it was very meaningful for us to put this webinar together. And we hope that the information that we share help carry you through this season and the seasons to come. We also want to give you guys a big thank you. Thank you for investing in yourself because being here today, hey, it's Wednesday, 7 p.m. Some of us are asleep or on our way to sleep. So the fact that you're here shows that you care. And so we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Vicki Walls. I'm a licensed professional counselor here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and I specialize with trauma. I also work with grief and depression. And tonight, it's a very touching time for me. I was inspired to put this webinar together because I too lost my mom this February, and I have really been on my journey of grief. It's been very difficult for me, but working with other clients that experience grief and researching it has helped me on my journey. So today I wanted to share some of the information that I've learned that's helping me. And we also have a great expert panelist here that's going to also share some information with you. They also specialize in grief and depression. And so we hope what we hope what we share warms your heart. And so what we want to do is go ahead and pass the mic on to Janan Redmond. He is our moderator for today. He's going to give you the rundown of the show. He's going to make sure that everything runs smoothly. And he's also going to make sure that what you are posting and commenting is heard, and so that we can address it on the panel. So whatever you feel, whatever you want to comment, please post it in the comments, and Janan will make sure that we hear it. So Janan, if you're ready.
Hey, absolutely. Good evening, everyone. My name is Janan Redmond, the visionary for the Redmond Creative Firm, and I am so thrilled to welcome you to the Holiday Blues, Understanding Grief and Seasonal Affective Disorder webinar. We really do appreciate you taking out the time, just like Vicki said, to join us for this important conversation about navigating the emotional challenges many of us are facing during this time. So what you can expect during this webinar is we'll explore the impact of grief and seasonal affective disorder, better known as S.A.D, and discuss practical tools to help us and or your loved ones to manage these challenges. We'll hear from our panel of expert speakers, followed by a live Q&A session where you can ask questions and gain deeper insights. So what we want to do with this session, and to be interactive and engaging, you can participate in the following ways. Number one, use the comment section to share your thoughts or insights. Number two is post your questions in the chat at any time. And number three, during the Q&A, feel free to join the discussion by submitting your live questions. Our goal is to create a safe and supportive space where we can learn, connect, and find light together. So let's get started. Vicki, you want to introduce the panelists?
Yes. What I'll do is I'll start by introducing myself, and then I will allow the panelists to introduce themselves as well. So again, my name is Vicki Walls. I'm a licensed professional counselor supervisor here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I specialize with trauma. I have my master's in counseling and counselor education. I have a specialist degree in counseling psychology from Indiana University. I have been a fully licensed counselor for, well, it'll be 12 years next month. I have a private practice, And we work with, well, the name of my private practice is A Better You, and our goal is to help you to become a better you. We work with vets, we work with foster kids, we work with sexually assaulted victims that may have depression, anxiety, PTSD. Um, and I also have an organization called Sister Girl Empowerment, and we focus on young women and girls. And our mission is to uplift, to empower, and to motivate them by providing valuable resources and giving them motivational and educational workshops and programs. I'm also a member of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, where I'm able to continue my goal of working in the community and being of service. And as a licensed professional counselor, um, I really coin myself as like a motivational therapist. I really like to motivate people. I feel like God has given me the ability to see the good in others. And so when I'm working with my clients, I'm helping them to understand, what seems to be going on so that they have a better understanding of who they are, what's going on in their world that's affecting them, and helping them to be able to understand it so they can gain some awareness. And with awareness, they now have knowledge and the power to change those things and to become a better you. So from here, I would go ahead and pass it on to Dr. Vince Allen
Good
Jr.
evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone, and thank you all for the opportunity to participate in the event tonight. I'm really looking forward to hearing everything that everyone has to say. My name is Dr. Vince. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist. I have a private practice in Atlanta that's via telehealth, so it's completely virtual. And I specialize in working with Black men. And I work with Black men specifically around issues related to anxiety, depression, family, and relationship issues. And I like to say that I work with Black men specifically, but not exclusively. So I'm open to working with anyone who thinks I'll be a good fit for them as a therapist. But there really is a need for services that really focus on the unique needs and experiences of Black men. And so I'm really specific and intentional, unapologetic about centering the needs of Black men in the work that I do.
Okay. All right. Dr. Platt, if you want to go.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. My name is Aziza Platt. I am based in Atlanta, Georgia, the land of the Muskogee and the Creek people. I'm a licensed counseling psychologist. I have a private practice here, and I also sort of work in various ways as part of a multidisciplinary group. And I also teach and train and consult. So the thing that I would say about me is that the way I practice is that social justice is an indelible part of that work. And so whoever it is that I'm working with, we have to be honest about the society we live in and what's going on and the ways in which those things impact people.
Okay. And Deborah.
Well, good evening. My name is Deborah Platt, and I am from the New Jersey area. Um, I am a grief counselor, a grief coach with Haven of Hope, and in my former life, I was a social worker, which kind of prepared me for the grief journey that I'm on. Um, 7 years ago, I experienced the tragedy of losing my son. And from that, I found that there were not a lot of programs or any programs for losing an adult child to violence. And so that prompted me to find an individual therapist who now has developed the Haven of Hope program in Trenton, New Jersey. And Haven of Hope, as one of the coaches, we deal with the entire body. We deal with movement to help you through your grief, and aromatherapy, sound therapy, and so we have um, group sessions, um, support group sections to help those that are grieving, any type of grief.
Okay. All right. And thank you for that. Okay.
Well, let's go get started with some of the topics. Understanding grief. We'll hear from Vicky, and then we'll move on down the line of expert panelists that we have here today.
All right. So, like I said, I recently lost my mom, and it's been 8-9 months. When I tell you the time is really passing by, although the pain and the trauma of losing her feel like it just happened, it's kind of like an experience that you can't explain. You just have to be in that experience. One of the things that I struggle with when losing my mom is I just had this thought that kept replaying in my mind because my mom passed from cancer and she had lung cancer, so she was really afraid of suffocating, and so there was a lot of anxiety present with my mom. I mean, it was at a point to where I was like asking God to give her Alzheimer or something so that she really wouldn't know what was going on and wouldn't panic so much. And one of the things that she always said was, Vicky, don't leave, stay with me, because she was afraid. She was afraid of, smothering, not being able to breathe. And so when my mom passed, one of the things that stuck with me was the fact that I know she was afraid and that she kept saying she wasn't ready. She was, kept saying, I'm so young. And she was the youngest of her siblings. And everybody have a story. And according to my mom, she didn't feel like things went the way she wanted to go. She wasn't, not to get into the information like that, but it just seemed like things never went her way. And so her leaving, and she didn't want to leave, and she was really fighting hard. It just stuck with me, that thought of, her leaving so young and her not wanting to go. And she was fighting so hard. And so one of the things that helped me get through was the fact that, I am a counselor, and I was working with other with other clients that were grieving. I can say that experiencing grief, it helps me to really connect with my client now, and I get it. And it's something that you don't, again, get until you're there. But I knew I had to get this out of my mind because I am a Christian and I accept death. I know that we will die. And I know that she is okay out wherever she is, but I just couldn't get over that. And it would wake me up at night. So I was, kind of like experiencing PTSD. It was definitely trauma, and grief is, like a form of trauma. So that was stuck in my mind. But I was doing some research, and my research was it was more about, looking at how the brain deals with cope, because I was like, why is this stuck here? What's going on? And so basically there was some good information, and a lot of it sounds scientific, and I don't want to sound too scientific because if you ask me some questions, I may not know how to explain it in the scientific way. So I wanted to make it a conversation. So I just got some bits and pieces. Keep me, I don't know what my time is, but make sure I don't run over. But one of the things that stuck with me is when they said that grieving is a form of learning, and learning takes time and experience. And our brain is doing its best to help us, but it's going to take time. So one of the questions, because I told y'all, we was out there on social media, we was reading the posts, we heard y'all. And a lot of the questions that I saw that was posed was, why does it hurt so much when you lose a loved one? And so, of course, I went and I was looking at how the brain works. And one of the things that they discovered is that we have a bonded relationship that's encoded in the reward network of the brain. The reward network is motivating us to seek loved ones out and to enjoy them as we did when we were with them. And so as having something taken away from us, from our sense of self, rather than having something added into our plate, it's a pretty big difference in our world. And so when people say they feel like a part of themselves is missing, it's really not a metaphor, because part of how the brain encoded that relationship, so the absence of the person is like an amputation rather than simply an additional stressor. In one of my sessions this week, one of the clients mentioned something about phantom pain. They were saying something about phantom pain. And when you think about what phantom pain is, first of all, just researching on trauma and grief and the brain and all that, you really understand how powerful and uniquely made we are. Because when I tell you this body was designed for us, I mean, for you, your body is designed to really protect you, give you everything you need out here to be in this world. I just want you to know that. And so you have these beautiful neurons that run through our body, and when you have like an arm or something that is you like missing or that's gone, your neurons, it still sometimes run there, send signals there. And what happened is, if something is wrong with our hands, the neurons or whatever will send a signal to our brain and say, hey, your hand is itching, so you can scratch it. Well, the phantom is the feeling of still, having neurons sent down there, thinking that your arm is still there, and it's sending messages to your brain, and you think you still feel your leg when it's actually gone, or your hand. And so it's kind of like the same thing when it comes to losing a loved one, because when in our brain, it developed like an attachment to people that we really love, really love. And this part of our brain, when it developed this deep attachment and this bond, it has this thought that this person that you love is going to be there forever. Now, on the other side of our brain, we know that we're not going to be here forever. But on that side of its brain, when it's forming this attachment, it thinks that it's going to be there forever. So when we're actually grieving, it is this side of our brain longing for the person that's no longer here, and the other side of our brain saying, baby, they're not here anymore. And when we do that, it gives us all this type of distress and emotions that you're feeling. And it's like you're grieving all over again. And that's why, you can't really tell a person how their grieving journey is going to be, because it's different, you know. And like they said, with time, it gets better and better, because eventually your brain that formed this attachment, that thinks that you're going to have this attachment with this person forever, begins to understand that they're not here. But again, it takes time. It doesn't make you miss them. It doesn't make you, forget about them, but it makes you to start understanding. So when we start to miss the loved one, we don't just have these, thoughts that will put us in a deep depression. And so even on my journey, when I think about my mom now, I don't think about her feeling like I'm afraid, I don't want to die. I am beginning to think about how she made me laugh, how she got on my nerves, how she would guilt me and all that stuff, because I realized that my brain is beginning to understand, it's beginning to accept that. And now it's time for me to create a new normal, a new way of living without my mom being on this side of life. And so when you are working with a counselor, or if you're reading books or whatever, you can discover ways that you can find a way to help keep that person a part of your life without thinking about them and not being able to function. I'm not saying thinking about them and not crying, because you will cry. Um, so I just wanted to share that part of grief with you. I hope that it helps. If you have any more questions, when we do our questions and answer panel, you can definitely ask questions. And please, come in if you experience the same thing, or if you have any questions, or, if you want to share anything, please share that. And so I'll give it back over to you, Janan.
All right, Dr. Aziza, do you have any coping strategies for SAD and grief,
Sure,
or
I have.
understanding them as well?
Well, one of the things I tell people is that grief is love's shadow. And so if we think about it that way, right, then it's just love that doesn't have a physical place to go anymore because that person has transitioned. Um, but when we agree to love people, we also consent to grieve them when their time has come. That's just part of the relationship. That being said, I think that it's really important to me. And one of the reasons why I do grief work, having had my own personal experience and having done some really active grief work that was transformative, is that I think oftentimes when we're grieving, we look at the last little bit of slice of life. This is when they were sick. This is when it was the end. These were the last few days. And those are the things that play over and over again in our head. And if we do active grief work, then I think we expand that window back to the entirety of their life and the entirety of our relationship. And we don't get caught up in just the loss, right? There's a whole person, there's a whole history there. And we get to have all of that and access it and enjoy that. and continue the relationship, right? Because it doesn't end just because somebody has transitioned. I mean, and especially coming from people where we know that we are quite spiritual and deeply rooted, that we often, the lights flicker and people say, well, there goes so and so. They here to let us know that they're here, right? And so taking in those synchronicities and taking in that we're still working through a relationship, even when the person isn't physically here. So again, the one thing I would say for both grief and sad is we have to be so intentional, right? For grief, you have to decide, I'm going to do this work. I'm going to let the pain visit, right? But I'm not going to let it stay. I am going to let it teach me what it's here to teach me, and I am going to work through this legacy of the person that I was in relationship with and what we're going to do going forward. With sad, everything, the way I work with my clients is, one, we make a plan before it even starts to get cold, right? If we know that we have a diagnosis. But everything from the moment you wake up to the moment you lay down has to be about, how do I give myself as much comfort, as much soothing, as much nourishment as I can. And a lot of times for folks, sad is around the fall and winter, but there are a rare few who actually have the opposite towards the spring and summer. So that everybody else may be waiting on the sun, but some people actually struggle then. So I want you to have a gentle wake up. I want you to nourish yourself with like root vegetables, right? Soups and things like that that are energizing and comforting can be really helpful. You got to have a project. You got to have something while you're trapped inside. You got to have things that are pulling you through each day, and you have to give yourself as much comfort as you can. So I have tons of like little resources that I send to folks and things that I suggest if it feels like it resonates, but I feel like I may be going over my time. So I'm going to pass it back to you, Jenna. I'm okay.
You're okay. Go ahead. You're okay.
Yeah. So everything from like, if you all have never seen it, those little alarm clocks that actually mimic the sun rising and setting and the moon, things like that actually help your body's circadian rhythm sort of recognize, oh, okay, it's time to get up, right? Even though it's dark outside, or it's time to lay down. So it can help you in that way. You've probably seen people talk about happy lamps, which are just UV free sort of like lamps that give you sort of like the light that we aren't getting. Taking your vitamin D is important. Most of us are deficient in vitamin D, so you probably should be taking it anyway, but it's definitely a good time to check in with your PCP and see what those levels are and take it. And then there are just other little things. I mean, there are people over the last decade or so that have created things that sort of like lean into folks who are feeling a little bit down. And there's a difference between the winter blues and sad. So just want to make that clear before we move on, right? A lot of us get the winter blues. It's cold. I'm snuggled up under these good blankets. I don't want to get up, that sort of thing. It's dark, it's rainy, whatever. But sad is really a form of depression, right? And it really does impact our functioning. So winter blues, you can get up in the morning and sort of shake that off with a good warm shower and a cup of coffee or something like that. Sad doesn't get shaken off like that. All right. So now I'm going to stop talking because I don't want to ramble, John.
Okay. Not a problem at all. Very, very good and very informative as well.
Yes. Yes.
So you made the scenario between winter grief, right? And
Winter blues.
Mm-hmm.
winter blues, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can you elaborate a little more on that?
Sure. So the winter blues is basically like, like I said, we're a little fatigued, we're a little tired, it's cold, it's dark, right? But it's temporary. And so once we get up and get going, we can function throughout the day. We may have some trouble sleeping and waking, right? That may be a little bit off. And we have some lack of motivation, and we may feel a little sad or down and out. But again, it's something that we can shake off if we're in a good situation, we're around good folks. With seasonal affective disorder, that really is a mood disorder. And the feelings of sadness and distress are really kind of overwhelming. And so it really interferes with our daily functioning. And for some people, it can be severe and debilitating. They cannot get up, they can't function, they can't do the things. And so it looks a lot like depression. It just happens to lift a little bit when the seasons change, when the light is back, when the weather's a little bit warmer. So if you think maybe you might have sad as opposed to just the winter blues, if you always are like, oh, I hate this season, and you struggle, it's okay to talk to somebody and just check in and see if it's a little bit more than just the winter blues.
Yes.
Wow, that was good. Dr. Vince, so I would love to hear from you about sad and grief as well.
Well, Dr. Platt kind of stole my thunder there because she gave out the explanation, but I did just want to raise, and I'd be interested to know what the other providers think about this. When I'm talking with clients about grief, I talk
Mhm.
about grief as an emotional response to loss, and so
Mhm.
oftentimes that loss is the loss of a loved one who's passed away.
Mhm.
But that loss can be the loss of any kind of relationship. So I have clients who are going through divorce, or they've ended significant friendships, or they're not getting along with their family. And so when we think about the holiday time and the grief that may come up, certainly it may come up around someone who has passed away, a child, a parent, a loved one, and so on. But also, a lot of us are feeling grief and may not even realize it because we're not getting along with our family. And so we're spending the holidays by ourselves, and we're grieving the loss of that closeness of that relationship. Or we're used to having our significant other and our children there with us, and we're going through a divorce, and now we're spending the holidays alone. And so
Mhm.
I think it's important, especially with a lot of the brothers that I work with, because a lot of people don't necessarily understand the various ways that grief can show up. I think it's important for us to expand what we think of when we think of grief and recognize that if you're dealing with some significant loss and you're having an emotional response to that loss, you could, in fact, be grieving that loss, even if no one has necessarily passed away. The
Yes.
other thing that, oh, did someone want to respond to that, Ms. Walls?
Oh, no, no, I wasn't saying anything.
Okay. The other thing that I just wanted to raise that oftentimes comes up with the brothers that I work with, there's almost this expectation that grief has a time frame, and
Mhm.
so it's been 7 years since I got a divorce. It's been 6 years since mom passed away. I should be over this by now. And there's almost this added layer of an emotional response to the fact that I'm having an emotional response. So I'm upset with myself for even being sad. I'm upset with myself for even grieving when I thought I was over this. And so I think it's important for us to give ourselves the space to let whatever comes up comes up. If you're sad, allow yourself to be sad, even if it's been a decade since whatever it was that you lost. Because we oftentimes learn to live with the grief, but the grief doesn't necessarily completely go away. And grief can be like a wave. It'll come and it'll go. One day you'll be fine, the next day you'll be upset. One day you'll be fine, the next day you'll be depressed. One day you'll be fine, the next day you'll be like, oh my God, I can't believe this happened. The shoulda, coulda, wouldas. I wish I would have done this. I wish I would have said that. And so it's important for us to allow all of that to just come up and to sit with it. And I'm sure Miss Deborah will talk about some of the ways to find supports around that, but not to judge ourselves for the grief, because I think a lot of times we do that. The other thing that I wanted to name, particularly because I deal with Black men, a lot of the depressive symptoms, seasonal affective disorder, grief, and so on, particularly for men because of the way that we're socialized, can show up as anger. And so you
Mhm.
find yourself being irritable. You find yourself being short with people. I don't feel like getting you presents. I don't feel like going to your holiday party. I want to stay home. I want to be by myself. That irritability, oftentimes, anger, particularly for Black men, anger is the one emotion that we're often allowed to express. We're either allowed to be angry or we're allowed to be numb and feel nothing. And we call it nonchalant. But in reality, you're being numb. You're feeling nothing. And so I think it's important also to recognize that for a lot of us, that anger is just another form of grief. It could be another form of depression or an indicator of seasonal affective disorder, because there oftentimes is such a limited range of emotional response that we're allowed to have as men, particularly as Black men.
Mhm.
Wow.
Yes. That was some good.
Well, it was, but speaking of Black men, since I'm one, what are some other ways that it shows its face or it rears its head outside of just anger?
So of course there's a range, right? It could be you're feeling sad, you're laying in the bed all day. Those
Mhm.
kind of more typical presentations that we expect when we think about depression, or we think about seasonal affective disorder. One of the other things that I've seen though is overworking.
Mm.
And so a lot of times for people, and I think this can apply for grief in general, is I feel out of control in this area of my life because I can't bring the person back. I can't get the relationship back. I can't get whatever back. So I'm
Mhm.
going to double down on the things I can control. And oftentimes, particularly for men, because of the way that we're socialized, that's work. And so I know if I'm not good at anything else, I'm good at working. So I'm going to work long hours. I'm going to work on the weekends. I'm going to excel professionally because that I can control in the midst of not being able to control anything else in my life. So that's one of the other ways that manifests, which can have a lot of downsides because those feelings and emotions are still there. They're just not being actively dealt with.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And can I say something onto that too? When we're talking about emotions, I know an emotion that a lot of my clients experience is the guilt, the blame, and I think I even experienced some guilt. And my mom was with me the last 3 years of her life, and I was here. And there were again the times when she would say, "Vicky, come here with me," and I've been in the room with her the entire time after I got off work, and I had to work. I also had a husband, I had kids, so I still had to tend to them. And so it made sense when she was alive, why I wasn't in there. But when she passed away, that guilt really hit me. It really hit me, and I was kind of stuck in it. And again, one of the things that when I was talking about how the brain works and how it forms these attachment that make us feel like that person is going to be there forever. It was also stating that even when the person that we feel is going to be there forever, like you have kids, I have adult kids, they went to college and all that. I did experience some grief when my second child went to school, not my first one. The first one, I was crying. I was like, "Oh, I got this." I thought the second one was going to be like that, but it really took me for a whammy. I did not understand why I was experiencing that, And again, it was just used to having him here, really doing nothing but dirtying up the house, stinking up the room, as I say, how those teen boys are. So before then, I was like, I can't wait till you get up out of here so I don't have to clean up behind you and all that. And then when he left, it was like, come back. And I was telling my husband, my boys, they can stay here forever. I'm not going to tell them to leave as an adult because I did experience that form of grief. But it was saying that with the brain, the attachment, it finds a way when the people that we love are not with us, like if they move away or they're gone for a period of time, it will, find a way to adjust to that and say, oh, they're here, they're still alive. Even though I don't see them, I'm not panicked because when we grieve, we also panic, when we're grieving them, but it's not a panic because we know that they're still around. And I often hear, like when loved ones pass away, you hear this a lot in the family. And they'll say, why is this person crying so hard? Because when this person was alive, they were not even here. And sometimes we experience it when we see like our friends or people on social media, they pass away. We're just like, oh my God, we really miss them. And that's again, because now this side of the brain realized that this person is gone forever. That side of the brain is still like, but we'll see them, where they are on their pulse. And it's the ideal of trying to help this part of the brain to understand. So that's why when people leave, if you didn't have a bond, well, not bond, but if you were not around them all the time, you still can miss them just as much as someone that lived with them every day. So when you were talking about that, it made me think about that. And then that makes the person feel guilty because they were saying, I should have spent every minute with them. And it's like when you're processing with them, really, let's process spending every minute with this person when they were here. What else did you have going on in your life? You could have spent every minute with them and it would have been okay. So yes, that is some of the range of emotions that you experience when you are grieving. Just want to share that.
Wow, that was good. Wow. Well,
If
of
I
course.
may just,
No, please
sorry,
go.
John, just quickly. Thank you for sharing that, Miss Walls. And I wanted to kind of go back just to speak specifically to seasonal affective disorder. Dr. Platt mentioned something that I think is important just to name about the vitamin D deficiency can often underlie or be one of the reasons that underlie the seasonal affective disorder. And vitamin D specifically is important because it plays a role in regulating our mood and in the production of serotonin. And serotonin is a chemical in our bodies that helps to regulate our mood. And so Dr. Platt mentioned this, but I just wanted to highlight specifically that when we think about Black communities, the research shows that because Black communities already have a vitamin D deficiency, we actually may be at higher risk for seasonal affective disorder. And I think that's one of the things that we don't necessarily realize or talk about, but is especially important for us as Black folks to be even more mindful that this is something that we're potentially at a higher risk of dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's good.
Hmm.
That's good. All right. Well, moving on to the support of the role of a support system in the healing and how to cope. The grief coach, Miss Deborah Platt.
Yes. All of these all of these things, all of these different feelings and emotions are something that no matter what your grief stems from, they all come together. And in our coaching program, we deal with the grief as a whole body in a whole body approach. We have 8 sessions, and the first session is mindfulness, and it's mindfulness in just getting your body to breathe. Because when you're suffering through grief, you don't realize it, but sometimes you're holding your breath. You're not breathing like normally. You go through different changes, and just to pay attention to your breathing during that time can, when you are going through that period of grief, that moment of grief, that second, sometimes we're not breathing. So just to make sure that you are paying attention to yourself, to your body, and taking deep breaths, because we know cleansing breaths are helpful for
Mm-hmm.
your healing process. The other thing that we do to provide support is to teach people that their bodies are healers. And so movement, um, the founder of the Haven of Hope is a dancer. And so that is one of the forms that we use to help the our clients to deal with the grief. Just getting up and moving their body in specific motions that we show them, but to move their body so that that will also, when they're feeling that moment, that strong moment, and they are in a position where they can move, that they can just move their arms, they can move their legs, or they can do a full body dance to help them to get through that time. Because all of those things are helpful to get your emotions, your pheromones, everything moving and not being stagnant in your body. We have an aromatherapist. Who knew that all those smells did so much for the healing of your emotions? Um, a couple of weeks ago, we honored the National Grief Week with a program. And so our aromatherapist created a scent that helps to calm you when you are having that moment. Um, and I'm sorry, Aziz, I didn't mail it yet. But she created this scent, and it's bergamot and something else and something else. But you just take a spray and just sit in the mist. And in doing that every day, especially if you're feeling that time, feeling it during that time, but even if you're not, if you just take that spray and just spray it and sit in it, and you do that every day, each time you do it, you're going to have a different emotion.
Hmm.
And it's something, she was telling us that you document what you're feeling at that time, and then you can go back and record and see how your emotions have moved each day that you have set in that scent. And it's I can't I've been trying it, and it makes a difference on how your body reacts to it each and every day. And it's just one spray. You can do it more than once, but just to acknowledge and make a point to document what it's doing. And I can't explain what it does. She's the expert. I just know it works. It has helped me, and everybody that was there was excited about trying this to see as a new tool to help them to go through that moment of grief that they're feeling at that time. What else we do? Also, teaching people how to honor the memory of the person, not just in
Very
thoughts,
important. Yes.
but I know when I finally went to the therapist, she's giving me all these ideas about I could make if I have any pictures, I can make a collage and all that stuff. Well, as being a social worker, I had already done all of that. So I already had 2 collages made by the time I had met with her. And that was comforting for me. That may not be comforting for everybody. Some people might want to draw. It can be a picture of anything. You can, it could be a picture of the sky, whatever it is that they feel comfortable, that makes them feel like they can get through that moment of that time. But so we do a memory thing where everybody gets a chance to create lasting memories of the person that they are grieving. But we also have a writing support because some people like to write. So we help them to form journals, begin practicing journaling, because that's something that some people like to do as well. And it is helpful to get your thoughts out. You write a letter to the person. I can't remember the name of the book, but there's a book that actually guides you um, in writing to the persons that you have lost, or writing to grief, or writing to the fear that comes with grief, or writing to the happiness or the memories. But just writing and getting that out, those feelings, those are things that also help with dealing with the grief. And so we teach people how to utilize all of those tools
Okay.
to their grief process. And it's not just the grief of losing someone, but it could be losing a job. It can be losing your house, because the grief is going to be there. And even if you lost your house, you're going to have that, and you have gained a new house. You may still have those feelings of grief that this could happen again.
Okay.
So
Well, thank you.
our you're welcome.
Oh.
Our support is full body.
Thank you. Well, we have a special guest today that who sponsored the event. He's the founder of BFED, Mind, Body, and Spirit, who will be giving their personal testimony. And then we'll go right into the questions. I have seen a lot of questions asked, so go ahead and start placing your questions in. But I'd like to introduce you to the founder of BFED, Eric Griffin.
Hey, good evening, everybody.
Clap for
How you
yourself.
doing? That's right.
Hey, man, I'm sitting here like writing mental notes, man. You guys have hit on so many great topics and so many great things regarding SAD and regarding grief. First of all, I just want to say appreciate you guys for sharing your time. Like I said, I'm the CEO of BFED, Mind, Body, and Spirit, and basically it's a personal wellness group that we look to provide resources to everybody, all inclusive of personal development. So anything needing to deal with enhancing your personal livelihood, that's what we're looking to provide. It's just a one-stop shop for resources. And that's what it feels like today. It feels like this was a one-stop shop. You guys have hit on a lot of things that me, as personally, everybody deals with grief in some form or fashion. But you guys have definitely hit some hot topics for me, and I just wanted to appreciate it. Like I said, this is your mind and your body and your spirit, they're all intertwined, and you guys hit on pretty much every aspect of how grief interacts with your mind, body, and spirit. So I appreciate that. You have officially allowed me to be fed some good knowledge today. So thank you.
Thank you.
I won't go into a personal story because we got a lot of good questions that I want to hear you guys answer because y'all are providing some good nuggets. So thank you. Look, if you want a bio, go to www.bfed.life.
All right, cool.
Thanks.
Well, no problem. So we do have a couple of questions already in here, and we would love to hear from Facebook and IG. But our first one here is from Camille, who says, "What is the best way to support someone who is going to grief through grief and sad?"
One of the things we want to stay away from is toxic positivity or toxic gratitude. So we often say things like, it could be worse, or, just think about the positive, right? And we're trying to rally people, but it's very minimizing and invalidating. So what you want to do is just try and mirror back where they are. Things feel tough right now. I get that. And if you're going to do practical things, it's hard when somebody is grieving or having seasonal affective disorder symptoms for them always to make a decision. And so instead of saying, do you need anything? Say, I'm going to the grocery store later today. I'm going to pick some things up. What's a good time to drop them by? Right. So taking some of that decision making and emotional labor off of them can be helpful. But I'll turn it over to others.
Okay. And I just want to say that, grief, especially with grief, it's one of those touchy subject that I think all of us run away from, because we just don't know how to be there, or what to say, because anything you say can be offensive, and anything that you can offer is not going to be enough. Right. And so we tend to run from that. And so what I would say is just the way you can help, people who experiencing grief and sad, is to educate yourself about it. The more you understand it and how it affects them, the more you'll feel comfortable when approaching them and being around them. You can definitely try to take your problem solving skills, antennas down when you're talking to them. Don't try to problem solve, just listen, just validate. Try to watch your temperament. If you are feeling a certain type of way and you're already in your emotions, you probably don't want to come around and talk to them, because when you say, I'm here, what's going on, and we start vomiting and telling you everything, and it may be the same thing that you heard, or you hear something that make you feel like they're weak or they're going the wrong way, and you kind of panic, you may give them information that can cause them more stress, or to be even sadder, by saying, hey, like in a sense, dismissing their feelings, or making them feel like they shouldn't feel that way. Don't cry, look, you've been crying long enough. It's time to get up and do something, blah, blah, blah. If you are going to give them some advice, give them a direction, okay? Not a directive, and not to make them feel like you're judging them. So you can definitely encourage them to seek professional counseling. And don't say seek professional counseling. These people are already low. We're already low of energy. We're not trying to go look. One thing that you can do is you can look for grief counselors, and you can say, hey, you know what? I noticed this right here. I think this would be a great person for you to call. Here go some people that you can call and talk to. And you can just promote activities if it's something that that they enjoy, bring it around, or just, conversations that they like to have. Just try to talk to them and understand, and try not to take it personal. If they don't really have that much to say and you're doing all the talking, you're really helping just by showing up, just by checking on them. And you may get the same dry answer, no, I'm okay, or I don't know, or tears. It's okay. You being there and being consistent, it speaks a lot.
Well, Vicky, I think you really answered. I'm sorry. That was another part of the question before you get started, Dr. Vince, was asking if a friend is grieving, how to help them. So thank you for that. Dr. Vince, please. Yes.
Just quickly, I think another important thing to be mindful of this time of year is to respect people's boundaries and to ask them what they have the capacity for. Because we're all having holiday parties and get-togethers and dinners and this, that, and the other. And of course, you want a big mama and your best friend and your niece and the neighbor. You want all these people to come together. But for some of us, those gatherings are actually extremely hard. And I don't think we really recognize how many of us are faking just to show up. And not to disappoint each other, because I don't want to disappoint you, but in reality, I'm having a really hard time, and I'd rather just stay home. And so I think it's important to assess for each other, like, do you even have the capacity to show up? I know you're having a really hard time. And to say, if you don't have the capacity, it's completely fine. And to Aziz's point, to offer maybe a recommendation, maybe I'll just come later and we spend some time together, or watch a movie, or I'll call you after the party and check up. And not to take it personal, because so often we take it personal that somebody doesn't want to come around, but again, we have no idea what it is that they're actually going through.
Can I add something just to piggyback off what Vince is saying, Dr. Vince is saying? There is, if you Google it, there's something called the Griever's Bill of Rights. And there's also a holiday grievers bill of rights. And to that point, you get to, one, be on your journey. It is your journey, and to things that was said earlier, there's no time limit on it. Your journey is going to look like your journey is going to look. But the other thing is, you absolutely, for people who maybe have had a recent loss, this might be their first holiday season, dealing with those things, right? And so being able to be mindful of that, and it may be you, right? It might be your first holiday season. One of I wish I could remember who told me, but when I had one of the most prominent losses in my life, somebody said the first year is the hardest because it's the first Tuesday since they died. It's the first time you're brushing your teeth. It's the first time you've traveled. It's the first time you had a period since. It's the first time for everything. Every little minute thing is the first. And that gets to be a lot. And so if this happens to be the first holiday season for you or for folks you're supporting, being super gentle and allowing them to show up if they want to leave if it gets to be too much, and to not be there as part of a big party if that does not feel good in this moment.
Can you I'm sorry, I had a question. Toxic positivity.
Sure.
Can you elaborate on that and share some examples, share what that means?
Yeah, so toxic positivity is basically when we're trying to rally somebody, but what we're ultimately saying diminishes what they're experiencing. So when you say good vibes only, okay, well, I'm not in a good vibe mood, so I can't come around you, or I can't be with you or spend time with you if it's not good vibes only. I have to only show this side of me. And sometimes we say it in the context of things that we've been socialized religiously, right? So, you just need to pray about it. Just stop thinking about it. Okay, but that's not reality, right? Like, yes, I can pray about it. And also, I am still hurting and I am still struggling. When we make people feel like they're ungrateful because they're struggling, so many people have it worse. You could have lost both people. You could have, like, there are ways in which people are trying to give you some perspective sometimes. But in doing that, it's like, how does that feel helpful or comforting, right? And so being able to move out of that place of sympathy into empathy, right? I'm just here with you as you are going through wherever you are. That's it. We don't have to fix people. We don't have to cheer them up. We just need to be present.
Yes.
Wow.
And I would, if it's okay, I want to kind of talk about like family when we grieve. Like if you have a family, try to be open about how you're feeling. A lot of people will suppress their emotions because they don't want to upset the other person, and sometimes you will hear people say, "Don't when we get there, don't get started now. Don't be make sure again you're not giving people direction. I mean a directive like don't do this, don't do that. Instead, you can just say, hey, if you're having a moment, I'm here. It's okay if you want to talk about it. It's okay. When you face your emotions, you are able to move through them. But when you suppress them and run away from them, then you stay stuck in them, and it can also create other emotions from that. So I would encourage family members to allow it to be an open experience and not just a personal experience. And another thing that I notice when I'm dealing with my family that grieves, especially when it's a tragic, all of it is tragic, but like when we lose kids, they feel like they have a hierarchy on this grief. How can you be crying? That's my child. Well, how could you be crying? You got 2 more kids left. It's just we are so, we're hurting and we don't understand how we can hurt one another. So like Dr. Platt was saying, you want to make sure that what you're saying, it's not something that's offensive and not something that's hurtful, even though you are hurting. So that's one thing I would, suggest, that we're open and we're more aware of what we're saying. And even if you don't know what to say, you can say, I don't know what to say. So if I'm saying something that is hurting you or bothering you, please let me know. Because while a
Sure.
person is grieving, you can learn too. And you are also affected too, because the person that you care about is grieving, even though that it wasn't your particular loss. It was a loss to you because the person you love has this loss.
Can I say something? A lot of times, the person that has lost someone they don't often need somebody to talk to them. Just be there with them.
Yes.
You
Yes.
can you can call them and say, hey, I'm free today. Would you like some company? Because I know you've been in the house and the holidays are going on, or whatever the situation may be, but I can come over, bring some cookies or whatever, and just be with that person and wait for them to open up and tell you what it is that they have to say, what they're feeling, what they need. Sometimes we really don't have to say anything, but just be there to listen.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Um, anyone else want to comment on that or answer or add to that question? All right. Well, let's go to the next question from Tasha. During the grief process, how would you deal with your own reality of mortality that feeds into anxiety, mortality?
Mhm. I think it's only natural that when we face the transition of somebody, that we think about our transition and other folks around us. Oh, so and so, and we often have that death comes in threes, and so we're thinking, well, who are the other folks going to be, right? And so that's just an existential part of being human. And I don't think that it's anything I want you to beat yourself up about. Let it come, let it go. Try not to ruminate in thoughts like that, because your brain doesn't know that some of the things sometimes that you're imagining aren't actually happening. And so then you have this really anxious thought and you allow yourself to go down that rabbit hole. And then your body starts to sort of experience it as though it's real, right? And so you find yourself being tense or tight, or, your chest, whatever it might be. And so just to know that that's normal, and soothe yourself and try and stay where your feet are. Be where your feet are. Right here, this is where we are right now. If there's anything else coming down the road, we'll deal with that when it comes.
To add to that,
Mm-hmm.
when I'm dealing with clients around this, because as Dr. Platt said, this is a very normal experience in response to death. What I talk about are values and living out your values. And values are the things that give life meaning, that give us a sense of purpose and fulfillment. Values can be things like family, friendship, love, independence, wealth, spirituality. And so oftentimes when we're anxious about something, we're thinking about what we don't want to happen, in this case, death. And a good way to redirect your focus is to think about, what do you want to happen? I do want to live a life where I spend more time with my family. I do want to live a life where I have a greater sense of spirituality. I do want to live a life that is more meaningful in whatever way that looks like for you. And that's often a great way to say, instead of focusing on what I don't want to happen, let me focus on the life that I have. As Dr. Platt said, be where my feet are, and focus on what I want to do with the time that I have now.
Whew.
Yes.
Be where your feet are. Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Bars.
Good.
Yeah.
Anyone else want to add to that?
Well, I also would just kind of piggybacking off of what they are saying, what Dr. Vince was just saying, like, in a sense, your purpose. A lot of the time when we experience grief, again, our body is experiencing some type of trauma. When we experience trauma, there's a part of our brain that shuts down. That part is the one that does like the reasoning and the analytical thinking and all that. And so when you have these thoughts that are just coming out of every direction, and like Tasha wrote, that's probably feeding to anxiety. You have all these racing, intrusive, negative thoughts, and it's just kind of like an overload. And because that part of your brain isn't functioning to be able to reason, through some of these thoughts that you're having, it will, keep you further in your grief, causing you to have depression or anxiety, and all that, and also questioning yourself. Sometimes it make you question your own life. I actually, experienced someone that I was seeing that was basically saying that they want to basically kill themselves because they want to be with their loved ones. And the thing that I asked them, because again, when we're experiencing trauma, our brain that allows us to think and reason isn't really operating. I asked them, so if you were to kill yourself, are you sure that when you die, you're going to be with your loved one? And they were like, no. I say, so if your whole thing is you want to be with your loved ones, and you're saying you want to have a permanent solution, and you're not even knowing what the outcome of that is going to be, then is that going to help you? And then when you think about loved one, because the key word I heard was loved one. I know you lost your loved ones, they're not here, but you also have loved ones that are here. And many people that I have worked with that attempted suicide, and it wasn't completed because they end up, surviving it. Some of them say the first moment that they attempted, the first time that they do it, whether they take a pill, whether they cut, or even whether they, shoot themselves, they have an instant, immediate regret. Because again, sometimes when we're in those spaces, there's a part of our brain that is not operating, that is not healthy, and things like that. So when you are grieving, there are, again, part of us, like our morals, our values, the way we think, it's not the same. And again, that's another reason why it's important to talk to people about how you feel. That's why if it's someone that that is grieving, check in with them, ask them how they feel. Let them talk. When they're talking, you can have kind of an ideal of how they're doing based off of what they're saying. If I need to go and have a family intervention, or if I need to come over some more, what is it that I can do? Let me just open the blind for you. Let me play some of your music without even asking them, music that they like in the background that's soothing and things like that. Something that gets them out of their routine of just laying around doing absolutely nothing, because our body works out of habits. And if you are grieving for a certain amount of time, then you begin to develop a habit out of that. And so if you have been grieving and all you've been doing is laying around, low energy, not motivated to do anything, once that grief starts to lift up, your body is still probably in that habit and it want to lay around, and it's a hard start up. So doing that, I would say that some of the things that you can do to also help is, if you know someone that is grieving that you're close to, make a goal of, this is how I'm gonna be there for my friend that's grieving. This is how I'm gonna be there. And again, whether it's showing up, whether it's calling, whether it's cooking, whether it's bringing something to get them in some kind of routine that I know that they enjoy doing, and it'll also help them, and it'll also help you.
All right, guys, we got enough room for about two more questions. The next question is from Romero. How do you cope with depression and anxiety as a very high performer?
Real quick before y'all answer that, because I want to answer multiple questions, because there's another question that's related to that. And what are y'all thoughts? Like, answer how high performers deal with that, and then how do you recommend treatment, either via medication or counseling or both? I just wanted to knock two birds out in one stone.
If I could just, to the medication part, we think of things as tools in our toolbox for wellness. And I know sometimes people can be reluctant towards medication. And so just to remember that there is no, you have to do one or the other or both or what have you. But I do think it's important to go into treatment with an open mind for what is going to help you function as best as you can. And it's important for people to know that you might take medication for a period of time. Doesn't necessarily mean you'll be on medication for the rest of your life. So I just wanted to say that part, if that's helpful.
Just to respond to the question about being a high performer, for a lot of the brothers that I work with, I don't know if this is this person's case necessarily, but it almost becomes part of your identity. Is that you're a performer, a high performer, or a high achiever? And the issue with depression and anxiety is that it may act against that performance in a way that speaks to you on the identity level. So now you don't know what to do because you're used to being a high performer, but depression and anxiety are getting in the way. So you may try to overwork, and now you may feel even worse because you can't perform at a certain level. I think one of the most important things is to find a sense of balance, because we say high performers and overachiever, but oftentimes it just means you're overworking. And particularly, as I mentioned, I work with men. A lot of times you're just overworking in order to live up to this identity of being a high performer. And so if you're dealing with anxiety and depression, it's important to find a sense of balance, whatever that means for you, and really prioritize taking care of yourself. A lot of times high performers, their self-care is the last thing on their list. They're taking care of their job, they're taking care of their family, they're taking care of the spouse and kids and all these other responsibilities, and they're the last thing. And so it's really important, if you're dealing with, particularly if you're dealing with depression and anxiety as a high performer, to really prioritize balance and taking the time to take care of yourself. And as Dr. Platt said, make sure there's other tools in your toolbox. Sure, working could be one of the ways that you cope, but how else do you cope outside of work? Is it medication? Is it therapy? Is it church? Is it singing and dancing, as Miss Deborah was talking about? Is it aromatherapy? You have to have other tools in your toolbox.
Okay. All right. Anyone else? All right. So I know there was a comment there was a comment made about a great resource for any support groups, and it was griefshare.org. Are there any more that you might have or that you might recommend for a lot of people who are listening today that might, this is brand new to them? They might never had any type of counseling, any type of coaching, any type of therapy, but they want to get started. They just want to see, maybe just tiptoe to some help outside of their friends and family and maybe the support group that they know of.
I think the person who put griefshare.org, that is great. In addition to that, there is Refuge in Grief, which is a blog, a podcast, and a book by Megan Devine. It's okay that you're not okay. And so they talk a lot about different forms of grief and other people and people's experiences. And I think they also even have an app at this point, which is like, I think it's Moving On Afterwards. I'll see if I can find the name of it before we get off. There's also something called the Grief Kit, which if you go to getsomejoy.com, somebody put together a lot of resources around grieving. And so that may be helpful to some folks. The app that I was talking about is called Actively Moving Forward.
I got a quick question real quick. So the purpose of Be Fed, one of the main purposes is about being intentional about when you need help, how you need help, and deliberately going to get that help. What are some tactful ways that we could either express that, or some tactful ways that we can attach that to our own personal goals in trying to deal with grief and sadness? And that's for anybody.
I just keep moving in here. Forgive me. I'm sorry for having so much to say. One, I want to say, be careful that you don't suggest somebody get counseling in a punitive way. Oh, you crazy. You need to go to counseling. That is not helpful, and that's not going to land. So we really want to invite folks to use yourself. Hey, I'm thinking about maybe seeing somebody or talking to somebody. Or when I did talk to somebody, it was really helpful. You can body double with people. And so what that means is, let me sit with you while you call a couple of these numbers and see if you can make an appointment. If it's okay, I'll ride with you to the appointment and I'll sit in the waiting room, but just to help people get to wherever it is that they need to be. So I'll let the other panelists talk about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I was also going to say too, ditto to everything that you said, Dr. Platt. Like being a support, being there for them, you know, while they are looking up counselors. And as I said earlier, you can also look up counselors for them and just give it to them. Um, and if their background, if they are Christians, you can also refer them to maybe talk to their church, their pastor, see if they have any groups there's also a lot of grief groups in church. I know Grief Share. I think Grief Share, some of them meet in church, and I don't know if it's a support group that started from a church, but there are a lot of churches that have like their own grief programs that you can go through. Hospitals also, they have programs that you can go to. Also, they offer grief support groups. But yeah, so I would say again, being there for them, suggesting that they get help, and again, sharing a testimony with them about how it helped you.
So my question was really geared toward individuals getting their own strength to go get the help that they need, identifying the strength in themselves, like being intentional and deliberate on getting the help that they may or may not know they need. Like what are some things that we can normalize as a culture to let people know that, like, hey, you don't have to sit in that. You can address that. Because I think that's what a big problem is amongst us males, especially African American males, is that we can't even identify the problem, and Dr. Vince can speak to this a lot more. And B, when we do, we don't know what that look like. Our spectrum is so small. Like I said, anger is probably the only results I know. Like, what can we do amongst this culture to that own it? Are you laughing?
Yeah, I'm laughing at you.
I have anger issues. Everybody knows I got anger issues, but I'm good. I'm working on it. That's why you guys are here with me. So, not specifically to Dr. Vince, but I did want Dr. Vince to help me help everyone else to do that, because it took a big step for me to admit that I needed help. But once I did it, it felt so freeing. And I don't know if that's enough to allow other people to do it. So I just want to know, what can people do to open themselves up to getting that help?
Well, I think the issue is not just asking for help as it relates to therapy. I think it's just asking for help in general that oftentimes we as men, particularly as Black men, struggle with. So to your question, I would encourage, I think as a community, we have to encourage brothers just asking for help. Like it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to not have to do it all on your own, to not have to have it all together. I think there's this pressure and this expectation that you have to have it all together. You have to hold everything down. You have to take care of yourself. You have to take care of your family. You have to be a protector, a provider. There's all this pressure that means you have to have it together. You can't break down and everything's going to break down after you. And that doesn't necessarily leave room for, one, recognizing that you need help, and then two, asking for it. And so I think we just have to normalize allowing each other to ask for help, and also checking in with each other and say, bro, like, how are you doing? And not like, oh, I'm good, you good, yeah, we good, all right, let's go. Like, no, let's actually have a very real conversation about how are you actually doing. It's the holiday time, and you, I don't know, lost your mother, or you are going through a divorce. I know this could be a difficult time for you. Talk to me. What's actually going on for you? And normalize having those kind of conversations, because once we do that, then asking for help and getting to the help will be easier.
Yeah,
that's great advice for the whole culture. Thank you, man. Appreciate that.
Very much.
Yeah. And I also wanted to say too, like when it comes to getting the help, there are some people that look at counseling in a bad way. It's like a bad place to be in, or if I go to counseling, that means that I'm weak. You will hear the word be responsible. So if I'm in counseling, that means that I wasn't responsible and I got myself in a situation that I shouldn't be in. And so that can be embarrassing, which make people ashamed to talk about it or not want to say anything to people. Make good choices, again, trying to make sure that we are perfect or put on the images, we can't make any mistakes. So me going to counseling would show that I made mistakes, or I don't know what I'm doing, or I'm losing control because now I have to hear someone else. And I'm saying this is ditto telling me what to do. And counseling is definitely not about people telling you what to do. Counseling is about hearing what's going on with you, getting an understanding and giving you insight that can help you to understand what's going on with you so you can make those choices and changes to improve yourself and meet whatever goal it is you're trying to meet. And then to figure it out, people say, figure it out. And so going to counseling, you're not figuring it out. You going to someone else and then give it to God. That's another big thing that we feel like if we go into counseling, we're not having faith. And these counselors that seeing you, they're not God. You go to God, and so it keeps people in that bubble. It keeps people to themselves and afraid to say something. So I'm just gonna take it to the grave with me. I'm gonna fake it until I make it. I'm not gonna go step in that office that they never step foot in, and the people that are telling them not to go probably never been themselves. And so you are providing a disservice to someone that honestly could use the help, by going. And then what they get, and a lot of my clients, when they come and start counseling, they out referring other people because they get a nugget and they share a nugget with other people. And so now that circle around them is getting better, and it just keep passing and passing and passing on. So I think if we change the narrative and the conversation about it, the stigma against, counseling, then you will have a lot of people that are not afraid to speak up.
Wow, that was good.
Thanks, Vic.
That was real good. Well, what we would like to do at this moment, because we're kind of pressed for time. Thank you. That was how they said it for me. This is great information. It is great information. What we'd like to do is ask each of you to kind of share a final key takeaway or a piece of advice that we need and how we can start managing, or start take that first step, or some of the things and coping mechanisms, or whatever advice that you have. We'll love to hear that from you. We'll start with let's start with Vicky.
Okay. What was the question again?
What is your final takeaway, your key takeaway, your piece of advice that you have for our viewers that are currently in need, or if it's something, or they know a friend or family member?
So this has nothing to do with grief. This has nothing to do with depression. This has nothing to do with anything. It has everything to do with yourself. My first advice is just get out your head, get everybody out of your head, and start taking better care of yourself by, first of all, listening to yourself, doing what's best for you. When you have the freedom of being who you are and living in your own truth, then you can understand and you'll realize what your lies are, what what's the unhealthiness about you is, so that you can go and get the necessary help that you need. So I would say just live in your truth, really invest in yourself. Stop looking for love, stop looking for approval, stop looking for directions from other people, and just, start trusting and believing in yourself. And it's okay to go to counseling. Counseling is not about coming in there because you have a problem. Counseling is very, very insightful. It can be very empowering. Like I said earlier, I coin myself as a motivational therapist. I have people that come see me that are working, for companies, they're CEOs, or they're about to start their own business or whatever, or they're trying to improve or grow in their role. And they come there because they know the mind is very important. And so coming to counseling, it can really empower the mind. It can give you some concepts that'll help you to, think positive, feel better in situations that you have no control over, knowing how to work through those things. So, that's my advice. I know I'm all over the place.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Vicky. How can our guests contact you or follow you? Do you have an IG? Do you have Facebook? Well, of course, we're on the Facebook Live, but there are multiple, right? How
Yes.
can we get in contact with you and your business?
Yes, I do have a Facebook page. I'm on Psychology Today. I'm under Vicky Walls. Just look in the Arlington, Texas area. My office number is 817-801-3414. You can contact us there. A Better You Counseling Center is the name of my practice. We also have a Facebook page there. And again, it's a practice. We have 2 other counselors that work there. And yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Vicky. All right, Dr. Aziza, let's go with you next.
Where it comes to grief and even SAD, the prophet Khalil Gibran has this saying, the deeper that sorrow carves into your being, the more joy you can contain. And so the goal is to know you can come out the other side of grief, and we can have a full life. And our living is how we keep our loved ones here. So, yeah, we have to move through it, but there is another side to it. So keep going.
Keep going. You need to keep going. How can everyone find you or contact you?
You can reach me. My website is azizabp.com. So Aziza, B as in boy, P as in Peter.com. And we go from there. And I just want to extend condolences to folks who are grieving any sort of loss
Yes.
in this season. It's been a rough year in a lot of ways. And if you've had loss on top of that, um, it's probably been an even rougher year. So may you all be soothed and comforted and feel some sense of peace.
Yeah. Yeah, we need it. Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you so much. All right. Dr. Vince.
So I'm a psychologist. Of course, I have a private practice. I'm a big advocate for therapy. I think it's important to recognize that therapy is not the end all be all, particularly as people of African descent. There are ancient wisdoms that have been passed down from our ancestors, things that we've done that are inherently healing. I think Miss Deborah has talked about that, our song, our dance. There's science that shows that those things are physically healing to our bodies and to our minds. And so I'm an advocate for therapy. Therapy is for everybody. Everybody may not be ready for therapy. And if you're not, that's absolutely okay. But you can always do something that's therapeutic. And it's important for all of us, whether you're going through grief or sad or depression, or even if you're fine and life is good, to still be very intentional about doing something that's therapeutic, whatever that is for you.
Mhm.
In terms of connecting with me, you can check me out on social media, the Dr. Vince, and my website is www.thedrvince.com. It's THEDRVINCE.com. And thank you all for having us and putting this together. I really appreciate being a part.
Hey, thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much. Miss Deborah Platt.
Well, you've already been given a number of groups that you can contact, support groups, and this is the time to reach out for help if you feel that you are in need of help, or if somebody helps thinks that you are in need of help, and as healing comes from waves, and maybe today the wave hits the rocks, and maybe tomorrow it will be gentler. So just take it one day at a time. And Haven of Hope, we have a Facebook page, um, and our email address is havenofhope25@gmail.com. We can be reached. So I wish you
Thank
all
you so
well.
much. And we'll make sure that when we do repost and post, that we have all this information. You guys have been
Mhm.
exceptional, exceptional.
Mhm.
Um, Eric, do you have any key takeaways or a piece of advice?
Man, this is what BFED is all about. This is what my intention is, to bring the people together that have the knowledge to help those of us who don't. And so I appreciate every one of y'all, Vicky, Mrs. Ziza, Dr. Vince, Miss Deborah. I sincerely appreciate you guys spending your time and helping us. I know this was very, very, very beneficial to a lot of people. I can tell by the comments.
Yeah.
So again, thank you. You will be the immediate resources I go out to as I build this BFED platform. So be prepared to be inundated with either requests or just some more work coming your way. So thank you guys for all you do. Remember, everybody, be intentional, be fed. Thank you.
All
Mhm.
right.
Thank you.
And can I say
Well,
something too?
I was coming to you anyway.
Oh,
Go ahead.
okay. Well, there was a post here too that I wanted to mention. Cherie mentioned about jobs that offer EAP when we were talking about getting help. That is definitely a good resource that you can use. It's a way of getting if you've never been to counseling, getting an understanding or a touch of it, because your job actually pay for it. They provide service for you, and it can come in the form of 3 to 10 sessions. And if there's another problem that we notice when we are meeting with you, we can get you to go back to your EAP, and they'll give you some more counseling sessions that's out of pocket to you. So I just wanted to share that. And I just want to thank everybody for just being here. All 31 of you guys, and it's probably more because it doesn't show the people from Instagram that are here. Thank you so much for being here. Really, shows that you are definitely invested in yourself, because we, presented some information that can help you and your loved one. This was very touching for me. It was actually very hard for me to get started today. So if you were here in the beginning and I was kind of like fumbling around, I was really emotional. And I know people don't think that, if you know me, people like me can be emotional. I know y'all mentioned like high performer. I can be high energy. I can be very happy, go lucky type person, but I do have emotions. I do have feelings. And sometimes when you stay hidden behind a certain emotion or a certain reputation, you can lose yourself in figuring out who you are. So I just, again, this right here is just as helpful for me as it was for you guys. Just being able to hear things. Dr. Vince, I love that shirt that was on your photo. I think it said black men. What it said?
Mental
Black
health
men.
matters.
Yes, that was very powerful and provoking. I love that.
I need one of those shirts, Doc. I'll trade you.
Yeah, I'd love to see you on here. I love your locks also. I just want to share that. And yours too, Deborah. I think I see some
Hey,
locks.
real quick, y'all, before we get off, I really don't want to. I'd be remiss if I didn't thank Janan for his great job moderating and putting all this together. So we appreciate you, Janan. Give a clap of hands. This is what he does. He puts events together, and he did what he does and made a great event today. So I appreciate all of you guys. Thank you.
Yes. And I also want to say I am also the founder of Sister Girl Empowerment. We also have resources for women and young girls in the community too. If you are grieving, if you have depression, there is a Facebook page that I have that you can go to. So again, I just wanted to put that out there. And from a Better You Counseling Center, we really do thank you guys for being here. Be fed. Thank you for what you're doing with bringing these resources together to connect people to mental health and, feeding their mind, their body, and their soul. Janan, with your creative spirit, thank you so much. And then for Dr. Vince, Dr. Platt, and Deborah, thank you guys for taking time out of your schedule, being here. So thank you so much. We are definitely doing a good service to everyone and ourselves. So thank you. Can we give ourselves a hand?
This is not the last time we meet. We're gonna link up again in the future for different other webinars and stuff. So thank you guys. Let's keep it going.
Keep it going.
Alrighty.
Right. Hey, hold up. I want to play my music.
Hold on. I was going to thank everybody, but since y'all...
Okay, go ahead, Jay.
But I do really, really appreciate everyone. Thank you so much for your time and effort. Not only were you inspirational and very inspiring, helping, right? We all need it. Again, I feel very privy to say we're in a climate that it's a time to heal. And we're seeing it, and people are reaching for help. It is our time. Like, it's our time, and we're trying to get everyone involved as much as possible. So I'm so grateful to each and every last one of you. Thank you. Play your theme music. So, and thank you to all the guests.
This is the B-Fed theme song. I'm sorry. Y'all got to listen to this.
Oh, we got to let the beat drop? Hey.
All right, that's enough. Hey,
thank you all for coming.
All
right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Be a better you. Be a better you.
You want to end it, E?